All right. All right. Hey, good morning, everybody. It is Wednesday morning, February the 17th, 2021, and it's good to be together this morning. Let me say hello. Good morning to Terry. Shalom, Terry. Good morning to my mama. I love you, Mama. Good morning. Good morning to Richard and to Ellen and John and Wendy and Emma and Sutton and Janet and Jerry. And we've got Kelly Kenfield, and we've got Kelly Woods and Melody. And good morning to Ruti. And we've got, and yes, we're going to pray for, my mom had texted me this morning, Charlene, and in Texas, those in Texas are having rolling blackouts, and it's freezing, like really freezing. I'm cold, and my neck's a little cold this morning. So... and it's not even really cold here. So we'll pray for those that are dealing with the loss of electricity and in the midst of this weather. Let's see. Good morning to Ron and Amy, to Sonia, Naum, and Sarah. Good morning, you guys, and Mignon and Rashad. Good morning to you. Shalom to you. And we've got Sarah and Jim and Nicole. And let's see here. Oops, it does this every day. Why I hit a point and it just slides all the way down. Hang on. I'm so sorry. All right, here we go. Sarah, Jim, and Nicole. We've got Laura Rowley, and she's driving, so she's not able to text. And we've got Sharon. Good morning, Sharon. And Rachel. And we've got, let's see, Elva. Buenos dias to Elva in Mexico City. Good morning. And to Dayspring, good evening in Scotland. And to Jessica. And then over here, we've got Pastor and Sister Martinez back in Georgia. And we've got Barbara Callahan live today. Good morning, Barbara. Glad that you have the morning available. And to the Eddies, to Lauren and Levi and Valor and Haven and Everett and to Kathleen. Good morning to you as well. All right, well, we're in 1 Peter chapter 2, and we're in verse 11. And, I do want to do kind of a brief overview again, and I hope I don't weigh you down with this, but sometimes when we go to pick up the next passage, just to get the sense, remember, they're reading this all as one letter. They're reading it all in one sitting. And so Peter, he's writing to these communities, to these believing communities that have been exiled, that have been there in basically modern Turkey, in Pontus, Cappadocia, Asia, Bithynia, Galatia. And so they've been experiencing suffering in exile. They've been expelled to be here, so they've been mistreated by the government. In the process, many have lost their inheritance, lost everything that they had accumulated through their lives. Everything that they had is gone, and now they're in a new place. And they're in a place where if they're Jewish believers, because they've been expelled from Rome because they're Jews, well, the non-believing Jews have rejected them. They're feeling that kind of rejection. And then the nationals that are there, the people that live there, resent them for being there. And they're maligned and they're marginalized. They're on the edges of society and all that comes with that they're experiencing because of their commitment to Yeshua. It's because of their commitment to Yeshua that so much of this is happening. And so Peter recognizes, he says, I want you to know that God knew that you'd be right here, that you're here, you're chosen and you're here. God knew by his foreknowledge, by his knowing that you would be here. And we live in a nation that's founded on Judeo-Christian ethics, at least, that's the foundation of our governmental, of the things in our government, of our Constitution. And so it's not, to be a believer here is not to be sort of on the edges of society, is not to be marginalized and seen as nothing. You're not, you can still be a believer here and rise to high levels of prominence and importance. But basically, the association with being a follower of Yeshua, just by nature of being his follower, was to be maligned and to be treated disgracefully. So you're not treated with respect. You're not treated with honor simply because of that. But God knows where they are, and so Peter's reminding them, look, you've been born anew. We praise the Lord in the midst of this. You've been born into a living hope. You've been born into an inheritance that will never perish, will never spoil, will never fade. It's kept, it's reserved in heaven for you, and you've been born into a salvation that will be revealed, that will be made known, though you can't see it right now. You love Yeshua, even though you can't see him. What you can see is persecution, but understand that these trials, that what you're going through, is actually producing something in you. It's purifying your faith as you walk through this fire. That it's not destroying you, it's purifying you. The things that have polluted, that would be polluting to your faith, are being revealed and exposed and burned away as you endure. And the goal and the key there is that, and as we'll see in today's passage, is part of enduring means maintaining your walk with the Lord, maintaining a reflection of his character in the face of persecution, maintaining the reality of who he is in us, that we are to love one another and we're to love stretched out, that we're to be holy, set apart as he is holy. So he says, gird up the loins of your mind, of your thoughts. Like if you're starting to get kind of weak in your thinking, you need to strengthen, fix your minds, brace yourselves, it says basically, but gird up the loins of your mind. Don't go back to the cravings you had before you knew Yeshua. Now, when we think of that, we can, whenever you think of the cravings or the lusts and things like that, we often think in terms of more, carnal kind of, the carnal nature, sexual kind of things that are associated with that. And that's certainly included. But the cravings, the temptation in a society in which you are persecuted, in which you are mistreated, in which your rights are taken away from you, in which you're marginalized, and you suffer financially, you suffer socially as a result of that, that the craving at that point, the passion within you, is to rise up in anger, is to respond with violence or to retaliate. And so at the end of chapter 2, which we're not going to get to the end of chapter 2 today, but we're given the example of Yeshua that says, look, you're not to retaliate. He didn't retaliate, and you're not to retaliate. And so we're supposed to be different and to be holy as he is, according to the holiness of him. And then Peter, reiterating the teachings of Yeshua himself, drawing on the writings of the prophets. Yesterday we looked at it, said he's building something. You're here on purpose, and he's building something new. He's building a house, a family, a house of living stones. So this is different. And the starting point for that building, the first stone down, everything is, the cornerstone is called the cornerstone because it's in the corner, and it's the first stone down, and it sets the alignment for the building. The cornerstone is the foundation of the building, and it sets the alignment for the building. And Yeshua is the cornerstone that we are being built upon, a house of living stones. And it talks about he is the living stone, and he's the stone that the builders rejected. Basically what humanity is building, what the powers of this world are building, they looked and they said, you don't fit. In fact, every place where you really see, we looked at this yesterday, where you see this focus on the Yeshua as the cornerstone, whether it's in the passages in Isaiah 8 and Isaiah 28, or in the Gospels. I believe we have in Mark 12, Matthew 21, Luke 20. Even when you see Peter's response to, or when Peter talks about this in Acts chapter 4, when Yeshua talks about himself as the cornerstone that the builders rejected, It's always in the context of the failure of those who are the religious leadership or the elite, the spiritual leadership of the time to actually be who God called them to be. I mean, in Isaiah 28, the Lord says that the priests and the prophets are like drunken men. They have blurred vision. They can't see clearly. Their judgment is affected, and they're stumbling all over themselves, and all the tables are filthy because they vomited it all over it. That's been the effect of the religious leadership. He says, who's going to listen to me? Who's going to hear me? You know who's going to hear me? He says, babies just weaned from the milk, just weaned from their mother's breast. That's who I'm going to use. Those who nobody considers important, those who don't have prominence, those who are nobody. I'm doing something new. I'm going to lay a foundation, a cornerstone. It's a sure foundation, and those who trust in him will never be ashamed. And so you, Peter, you feel rejected. You feel like that you've been forgotten, that you've been discarded, but you're here on purpose, chosen, and the Lord's building something new that doesn't look like what the world thinks it should look like, doesn't look like what the religious leadership thinks it should look like. It says you are a chosen genus. Like we use the word genus in our scientific study. You're a chosen kind, a chosen generation, but you're a chosen kind. You're a kingdom of priests. That's who you are. You're a nation, an ethnos set apart. You're a holy nation. You're a holy people. And here's why. God says, you who are a people who were not a people, but now I have made you a people who were not a people, so that here's why you're here, in a place you don't want to be. Don't forget who you are. You're mine, my own inheritance, chosen, a house of living stones, so that you may proclaim, you may make known the excellency of the one who called you out of darkness into your light, into his light. So now you're in darkness. So now you are to be light in the midst of darkness. So it's important knowing who you are, being in a place you don't want to be, among a people who you don't want to be around, that God has put you here intentionally, with purpose. And so that's where we come in at verse 11 today. So having explained their identity as God's people, he now comes to living it out. Now, here's who you are. Now, how do you live in right relationship with God in the midst of a hostile and pagan society? Verse 11, he opens up, loved ones, agapetoi, loved ones, I urge you. There's the Greek word here, parakolo, is please. Like if you're talking to someone in Greek now, you say parakolo. I know this because my wife is Greek, so she says parakolo. So you say, please, I urge you. She doesn't say it that often, but she would tell me. She does. No, she does. Anyway, she doesn't say it often. But she told me how it sounds. Yeah. He says, please, as strangers and sojourners, I urge you as strangers, as sojourners. And these two words, strangers and sojourners, one is strangers is paroikus, which is alongside the house. So you're not in the house, you're alongside the house. So you're strangers, you're from outside the house. And as sojourners, which is paradipimus, it's para and demos, which is outside or alongside the population, outside the people. So you're strangers, you're sojourners, you're outsiders, you're outside the house, you're outside the community. So I urge you, as people who are outsiders, strangers and sojourners, keep away or hold at a distance, apechasthai, hold at a distance the cravings of the flesh, the fleshly cravings that war against the soul. And the word for war has to do with an army. They're an army against your soul. And soul not having to do with just your sort of the incorporeal part of you, the spirit, but it has to do with the fullness of you. That there are fleshly cravings, fleshly desires, fleshly longings that war against your very being. And again, we think of those cravings in our society, in a highly sexualized society, in terms, of sexuality. But the cravings can be the desire for revenge, the hunger for retaliation, to the craving to, I have to say something, I have to speak up and defend, the desire to fight. There's that craving as well. And in a society in which they are marginalized and treated as nobody, the desire to stand up and fight for yourself. Because look, when in that society, in a pagan society where everything, the religions were all highly sexualized, and it's not as though if believers partook in those things, it's obvious Peter's saying don't do those things. It almost goes unspoken, but it's included. Don't do those things. But that's not going to affect your standing among the unbelievers. It's not like in those days, believers or unbelievers, pagans would have thought it weird that you weren't partaking. That's what made you strange. So, and that's good. You're not to partake in that, but don't hold on to the lust of your flesh. And again, it has more to do with, as we'll see by the end of the chapter, with the hostilities, with the anger, with the rage. A lot of times when we think of, in Galatians chapter 5, when Paul talks about the works of the flesh, he talks about all of that stuff, right? He talks about sexual immorality, yeah. Talks about drunkenness, all that kind of thing. But then he talks about rage and hostility. He talks about the slander, gossip, as a work of the flesh. That which is, all of those things are warring against your very being. And so, in fact, there's a word that's kind of stuck in here that it says the cravings that war against your soul. But the word there is aitines, which is the ones which. It's an intentional kind of, the cravings, the ones that are warring against your soul. So there are different cravings. It's not a specific, what are the fleshly cravings that are warring against your being, that are keeping you from being who you're called to be? Because we're all different, right? We all have different hungers. We all have different appetites. Some people have no desire to retaliate. Some people, that's not a battle for them at all. But there are other cravings, and so the ones that are warring against your soul, you need to hold them at a distance, he says. So there's an emphasis to know who you are and to recognize where you are, right? As strangers, as sojourners, as outside the house and outside the populace. This is not your home. And it's okay. You just have to recognize that you're in a place among a people. Now, that even if it's your land where you live, because this letter ended up getting circulated, even if it's where you're from, that this is not your first priority. Your first allegiance isn't to this kingdom. Your first allegiance is to his kingdom. And so Peter's saying you got to hold these things at a distance. The desire to retaliate. Who better would understand than Peter? Right? When there's a part where he thinks that defending the Lord has to do with taking out his sword, and he cuts off Malchus's ear. And the Lord says, no, that's not what we do. He rebuked him again after rebuking him earlier for saying, when he says, when the Lord says, I'm gonna die, I'm gonna suffer, and Peter says, no. And Yeshua says, get behind me, Satan. You don't have in mind the things of God, but the things of man. And so the things of man, the things that war against the soul, are that which go against the desires of God, the heart of God. Verse 12 says, keep your conduct honorable among the Gentiles, among the ethne, among the nationals, those who are here. Then, while they speak against you as evildoers, they may, from noticing your good deeds, glorify God in the day of visitation. Right? So your conduct among the nationals, those whose home this is, among the people that live here, this is their citizenship. And the way that you live your lives among them is to be, it says, it's to be beautiful among the nations, among the peoples. So that, for this purpose, here's why, in order that, when they're speaking against you as though you're evildoers, they're going to observe what you do. They'll see what you do. And from the beauty, from the good, from the beauty of the things you do, they will glorify God in the day of visitation. And the word for visitation is episkopos, which has to do with watching over, when the overseer shows up. So Peter expects that his readers can live in a way that will be recognized as beautiful even by the standards of unbelieving pagans. Right? I mean, he says, live your lives in a way that when they go to make false accusation, you're going to live in a beautiful way, and they'll recognize there's something beautiful here. So this presupposes there's this overlap, that there is on some level that which the unbelieving world can recognize as good and beautiful. Right? There is written into us, in the nature of God having made us into his likeness, a recognition of what is good and what is evil, of what is just and kind. The world recognizes that. The unbelieving world recognizes it's not as though they don't do good for one another. It's not as though philanthropy and doing good deeds is limited to the believing community. They recognize that. And so he's saying when they go to malign you, make sure that what they see is that you're doing, you're living beautifully, that you're doing good. That, again, you're going to, don't let them see you retaliating. Don't let them see you, you're marginalized. There's malicious slander. So when here's what's happening. It says, when they speak against you as evildoers, what are you supposed to do? When they malign you, when they slander you, and it's not true, they're lying against you, you're being treated unjustly, how do you respond? It says, keep your character beautiful among them. Then in the midst of that, they'll have nothing to hold against you. They're not going to, it's like my dad would always tell me to live your life above reproach. Don't give them anything to point at. Live your life so that you have no secrets, right? So you don't live with secrets that you're afraid, well, if everyone knew this. People are afraid of secrets being exposed. You don't have to be afraid. You live in genuineness, right? Get rid of all falseness. Here's who I was. Here's who I'm becoming. I don't have to be afraid if I'm not living in falseness, like we talked about over the last couple days. Let them see the good. Let them see the good that is being done. Let's continue here. Verse 13, for the Lord's sake, submit yourselves to every human authority, whether to a king as supreme, or to governors sent by him for the punishment of those who do evil and the praise of those who do good. So it's saying, it opens up with saying, submit yourselves, be submitted to every human authority, to every human institution, basically, every humanly created institution of authority. Be submitted to that because it's the Lord has sent it. It's of the Lord, because from the Lord, whether it's a king who is set as over all, as the one above, it says, or whether it's to a chief or a commander, a ruler or governor, that the God put them in place. Now, whether they operate in that way or not, God put them in place so that they can, so that what comes from them is to judge that which is evil, that which is bad, and to approve of that which is good. So you be in the midst of where God's placed you, you have to operate. He's not saying withdraw from society. He's saying conduct yourselves properly within that society. To submit is hupotasso, is to put yourself under the appointment, under that, in that place. And so we're to walk in, not breaking the laws, not disobeying the laws, not walking in rebellion against the laws. And obviously, if the law says to do evil, you don't then do evil in obedience to the law. And that's plain. But the issue is this is not to obey the law, to submit to the human authorities, to the governors, to those who are in authority, is part of living out our witness in this world. It's part of being a light in the darkness. That our goal is not to change the laws, but to see the people changed, to see hearts changed. We have to recognize you're outsiders, you're sojourners. This isn't your place. You're a chosen generation. You're my people. And I've put you here for a purpose. So it's important how you live among those that are naturally of this place. In Jewish thought, the honor or dishonor of God was determined by how outsiders viewed the deeds of his people. And so it has to do with how we reflect God's reputation. What do people say about God when they see us? That when they come to make accusation, they actually have nothing to point at. That they can make no accusation. That when they go to speak evil of you, all they can see are the good that you've done. Verse 15, for this is God's will. Right? This is God's desire. It's his delight. This is what he wants. It says, because such is the desire, delight of God. The doing of good, it's a combo word. Agathos, the good, and or good things, and poieo, which is to do. The doing of good, in order to muzzle, to silence that which is of the foolishness of men who are ignorant, of people who don't know. The word ignorant often carries such insulting connotations. It's like, you're ignorant, and that's the way people use it. But it's really speaking of those who don't know. To silence the thinking, the foolishness. It's a combo word. It's the anti-thinking, the foolishness of men who just don't know. This is God's will, how you're going to live. How you're going to live in the midst of a world that is hostile to you. Again, Peter recognizes that God desires, that there is something that the unbelieving world recognizes as good. They can see it. There's in Jeremiah, it goes in line with what the Lord said through Jeremiah when they were going to be going into exile. Right? In Jeremiah 29:7, it says, also seek the shalom of the city where I took you as captives in exile, and pray to Adonai for it, for in its shalom you will have shalom. That we are to seek the shalom. We are to live out God's principles and his purposes, his character, reflect his character in the place that we live. Verse 16, live as free people, but not using your freedom as a cover-up for evil. Rather, live as God's slaves. Literally, it kind of goes like this. It says, as free people, not like those concealing in order to have evil. Not that freedom, right? But as but freedom from God as his servant. Freedom that comes from God, as from God, not freedom from, freedom that is as from God, as his servants. The freedom of the believer is not rooted in escape. It's not founded on, it's not a freedom that comes in just escape. It's basically, it's rooted in a change of master. You're going to be a servant of one or the other. The question is, who do you serve? When we, in Hebrew, the word avod is to worship. When you read in Exodus that their slavery is called avod, they are called slaves avodim under Pharaoh. But God says, let them come to avod me. We are avodim of God. And the difference between slavery and worship has to do with who the master is. Under Pharaoh, it just takes and takes and takes and takes, right? And just lays on, build more bricks with less. I'm going to require more with less. And the Lord brings us out of there. And under him, he brings us into freedom. And then he feeds us. And he gives and he gives. And he says, rest every seventh day. And he gives us, there's a difference. The difference is the one who rules you. So you're going to live freely, right? Not as those trying to cover up evil, because that's not freedom. That's slavery to sin. That's bondage to your secrecy. That's bondage to that deception. But live as God's servants. That's freedom. That's freedom. He's the one who feeds you with manna in the desert. He's the one that walks with you. Know who you are, know where you are, know what God's called you to do. Verse 17. Honor all people. Honor all people. Treat all people with respect. Be honoring and respectful of everyone, is what it says. It actually says basically everyone. Pantas. Everyone. Honor everybody. Treat everybody with respect. Love the brotherhood. Love the believers, the brothers, your family. Love the brotherhood. Fear God and honor the king. Respect the king. Right? So we're not given license in a hostile society under hostile leadership to come out in rebellion, but we're to operate in the place that God has put us in accordance to his purposes, in accordance to his ways. We are fortunate to live in a place where we are able, the laws, what is legal, allows us to express. We're allowed to vote. That's not rebellion, right? The government here is rooted in the Constitution of the United States, and so, in as much as the Constitution is not in antithesis to God, we have to obey it unless it's giving us direct violation, telling us to directly violate the things of God. But the goal is this. The question is, people want to bog down in all the technicalities. And they want to have arguments. And what? I hit my mic. I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. They want to have arguments. Really, the question is this. It really boils down to, in the place where you are, God's put you here. And there are going to be people that only ever get a chance to see Yeshua through you. I know you've heard that, you're the only Bible some people will ever read. It's become a cliche because it's true. That we're to be a window to the character of the Lord. With some people, we only get one opportunity. And it matters if they discredit us. If they discredit us because of the rebelliousness in our hearts, because of the way we carry ourselves in a way that doesn't reflect the character of Yeshua, who said, love your enemies, who said, do good to those who persecute you. If they discredit us for that, it matters. So the driving impetus for Peter here is to say, and through the Holy Spirit through Peter, to say to us, stay focused on what you're supposed to be focused on. Major in the majors. On being, engaged. Yeah, how are they going to see you're good? You're supposed to do good. You're supposed to be a blessing. Lord, bless us that we may be a blessing. You're supposed to, it's not just what you do privately behind closed doors. We're supposed to do good among them in the place where we're at, even when they mistreat us, even when they malign us, even when they throw us to the side and they don't treat us with respect. You respect everyone, it says. The king doesn't respect you, you respect the king. That's the way it works. Love each other. Fear the Lord. And then act and treat everyone with honor and respect. So that the Lord might be glorified on the day of his visitation in their midst. That's what matters. That's not what matters. What matters isn't that I win. What matters is that they see him and maybe come to know him. All right. Well, let me say good morning to anybody that I missed this morning. Good morning to Misty. Good morning to Katrina. Good morning to my nephew Douglas. Love you, buddy. Good morning to you as well. And did I say good morning to Lori? Good morning to Lori. And I think that's everybody. If I missed anybody, I'm sorry. But look, let's live out the love of Yeshua where he's planted us. It's just that simple. Don't fight for yourself. And we're going to see that tomorrow's passage. So anyway, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Shalom, shalom. Have a beautiful day.